So good afternoon. So nice to see you all. Thank you for coming down and joining us today. It's a great privilege to be here, and it's so exciting to come to Milan and talk about fashion. I must admit I have some imposter syndrome as a result, because this really is the heart of the industry. It's a really exciting time, but it's also a very daunting time. I started my career in 1994. I dropped out of university and I started a very early web services business. My parents couldn't understand why I was throwing away my expensive education, to go and do something brand new in an industry that no one had heard of. But the reality was it was very exciting, right? There was a lot going on. There was this whole sense that something exciting was happening. The internet was going to become a thing. It's going to become a real force for change. And I have the same feeling today. There is something about the change that's happening with the adoption of generative AI that is going to transform in a way that the internet promised to do and has done to some extent, but it will continue that revolution. And it's going to change the way that we shop, it's going to change the way that we operate our businesses, and it's going to change the way that our economies work. So, with that in mind, I thought what I'd do this afternoon is talk through what I see as some of the really interesting developments in AI, but also talk very specifically about the research that we did at Map Fashion earlier in the year with a lot of fashion retailers in the UK and some here in Italy too, to really understand what's going on around the customer experience and how we can build customer experiences that fundamentally deliver customers an experience where they really feel understood, whether they be machine intelligence or human intelligence. And we're going to have to solve for both. So we're going to talk about a few of those things today. I do like to start many of my presentations with this quote from a CEO, a famous US CEO who had the transformation job of resurrecting a business called General Electric in the 80s. And he says, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, then the end is near. And I don't know about you, I'm a business leader. I've been in many organizations in senior roles. I don't think it's ever been more true than today. If you don't find a way to evolve your business quickly, then the external change is going to catch up with you very fast indeed. So I think the time is now, so let's get into it. To set the scene, I think this is a really interesting graph. We're going to plot number of monthly active users on the left here and months post-launch to get to 1 billion users. So you can see here on the right-hand side of the screen, as you see it, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, okay, X or whatever it's called these days, is down the bottom. But it took roughly 8 years to get to 1 billion users. 8 years. Then this thing called ChatGPT 3.5, which was kind of the first proper consumer usable version that got distributed sort of November 22, came out. And in the space of, roughly 26 months, it got to 400 million users. And then something very interesting happened back in April, May of this year. And adoption suddenly sped up and went very quickly to 700 to 800 million weekly active users. This is extraordinary growth, right? And if you look at this curve, this is an exponential curve. The rate of change is fast and accelerating. So when we talk about the external market and how you need to respond, it's all about being able to accommodate this pace of change, to do something quickly. And the infrastructure is already there, right? The internet is well adopted and used by just about everybody these days. So the mechanism to distribute this new technology and to gain adoption is already in place. So what happened back in the late 90s was something more like this. What we're seeing now is this very, very rapid adoption indeed. Sam Altman said the ChatGPT launch 26 months ago was one of the craziest viral moments he'd ever seen. They added 1 million users in 5 days. In this little inflection point here, they were adding 1 million users an hour. Just think about that for a second. That's viral, right? So it doesn't matter what media you read. There's something in every single broadsheet paper in the UK, every online forum, every digital magazine that tracks the evolution of the internet. Everything is about AI, and it's changing shopping from discovery all the way through the purchase journey, in fact, out the other side as well, into the post-purchase experience. And the internet economy itself, don't know what's happened to my slide there, do we? Anyway, hopefully it doesn't do that for the rest of it. It doesn't look very, it's not very good contrast. But anyway, the internet itself is very much changing from a search-driven economy to an AI-driven economy. And that's the big change that we're all going to have to get our heads around as we go. And so our experiences, the way in which we create the customer experience also has to change, because we have to solve simultaneously now for our humans, but also for our machines. And if there's one thing that I want you to take away from my presentation today, it is that rich product data is the key unlock that solves for context, which is what we as humans need to understand and create meaning, but also what large language models need to understand and create meaning. And that is really going to be the basis of all experiences going forward. Context, meaning, and then experience. And when you think about it from a brand perspective, brand is experience. Every single touch point matters. So being able to drive great interactions in every one of those touch points across your whole customer journey is going to require you to think about the world a little bit differently. Fortunately, we're now seeing some data come out around how people are using large language models like ChatGPT, Anthropic's, Claude, and Gemini. They had a research paper come out recently called How People Are Using ChatGPT. You can find that online. There's an economic index, and there's some write-ups as well. I'm sure we'll distribute the slides later. And what's very interesting is that from a consumer perspective, ChatGPT has absolutely run away with the leadership position. 700 million weekly active users, 15 million on Claude, 40 million on Gemini, although, of course, Google's integrating Gemini into search, so maybe that will become a much bigger number very soon. But when you look at what they're actually doing, oops, sorry, I've gone too far. What they're actually doing in there, if you look at all messages, non-work related, so this is very much a consumer-driven set of interactions on ChatGPT. So 27% is work, 73% non-work. Of those, 33% of non-work were seeking information, so they're broad queries looking for answers. And of that, 2%, 2 to 3% are seeking information about purchasable products, i.e., revealing some intent to purchase something or research something. Now, if you throw the results of that back into ChatGPT and start asking it some questions, in particular about how quickly growth is going to happen, what you can see here is shopping queries, millions of shopping queries per day. At the moment, we're about 53 million shopping queries a day on ChatGPT. But if you roll forward 18 months and 36 months, you can see that that rises very, very quickly, potentially to, it's a bit obscured by that messages box, but it says 419 million up there. That's the best case, 223 million more conservative case. That's a lot of shopping queries going on in that platform. So our attention as consumers is moving from traditional media, online media, some search and online forums and social into these LLMs. So if that's where our consumers are, that's what we really need to understand how to effectively reach them and build an experience where they are. Now, if you compare that to Google, Google, about 7%, I think, oh, sorry, I'll just flip that back. About 7% of Google's daily queries are very specifically shopping related. So you can see here, there's over a billion queries on Google that are very specifically related to shopping every day, 53 million there. You know, that Google number grows a bit, but ChatGPT is coming up much more quickly, so it will account for roughly 30% of queries, potentially. This is all a bit of extrapolation, and of course it might not be exactly like this, but my point is that it's going quickly, and it's going to happen very fast, and you need to start thinking about it now. So I'm from the UK, as you can tell. Unfortunately, I can't speak in Italian. Italian is a much more expressive and beautiful language, I have to say, so you're stuck with my English. But in the UK, we also have some crazy sports like cricket that I know don't translate very well over here. The point being that you want to look smart for some of these events, but you also sometimes want to go to the office and wear the same clothes, right? So this is a typical query. This is one of the ones I did into ChatGPT to see what it does. Who's done this? Who's asked ChatGPT? Hands up, people that have tried. Yeah, quite a few hands, right? Everybody's interested. So you go in and you type in, I'm trying to do this thing. I'm looking for some, whatever it is, workwear, or I'm going to a wedding, or I need some help because I'm going on holiday to this destination, whatever it happens to be. So what ChatGPT does is it creates you a buying guide, effectively, in real time. It's pretty impressive. My previous startup was a business called Amplience. We're a content management platform. And our customers used to spend days creating this type of content to put on site. And this is happening instantaneously. You drop this query in, you get these answers. So it talks about the features of the products, why it might work for the context that I've given it, why it might feel right for you. Then it starts offering suggestions. So as a brand, are you part of this conversation? How do you become a part of that conversation? And how will that conversation evolve, I think, are really critical questions. And as you can see, it gives me a few further thoughts, identifies some of the qualities of the products themselves so that I can really start to make a better decision. And fundamentally, it starts to define my buying criteria for when I'm actually going to go and make that purchase. Google's doing something very similar. So if you go into I can't remember what they call it now, AI mode or something similar. What you get is a similar type of answer. It's a bit less detailed, but essentially you're pulled into the same experience. It starts to generalize your problem and starts to offer you solutions. And then, of course, because Google's model is all about monetizing that intent, it starts to deliver you some brands that might work for it. This is all happening, again, very quickly. So how this evolves will be fascinating. And then ChatGPT themselves came out and said, right, that's all very well, but what we really want to do is we want to keep the customer in the experience. So why don't we give you the ability to check out and connect your retail experiences with the LLM itself? So there's all of this buy with ChatGPT, instant checkout, agentic commerce protocol. You'll hear about more of these as we go. It gives you that ability to fundamentally create an experience inside ChatGPT, which is pretty exciting. And of course, there's a product feed spec as well, so you can start to get your product data and your catalog listed in that experience, and hopefully appearing contextually in the right points of that experience as well. And I think some gentlemen here are going to talk about that in a little more detail later. So someone's broken my formatting. That's interesting. Who's got which laptop is this running off? Sorry? What's wrong is that you've copied the slides in, but you didn't keep the formatting. So it's washed them all out and erased. I mean, I can make it up. It's fine. I just have to remember where I was. Anyway, but let's continue the story while Anna Rosa has a think about that. So what is this going to do for you fundamentally? Well, there's a few other things that have happened recently in ChatGPT. One of them is that they've now announced an app store. So you'll have the ability to create an app within ChatGPT itself. So you can start to bring your experience into that chat experience and start to work it through. All of this is going to influence the way in which your funnel works. So by bringing great detailed product attribution into the shopper funnel, what you're going to start to do is influence the top of funnel metrics and drive ultimately more conversion through your sites. So it's very much top of funnel at the moment where this is working, but by bringing more top of funnel users into your experience, you're going to have a much better ability to convert them when it really matters. So that's broadly the state of play in AI. It will be different next week. The pace of change is so fast. Every day there's a new announcement, right? But of course, it's asking, everybody's having to think about, what does it mean for my brand? How does that experience translate? How are all these pieces going to work together? So to answer that question, we did some research earlier this year. We went and spoke to 45 senior retail executives, mainly in the UK. Some of them were over here in Italy and Germany as well. So mainly chief customer officers, chief marketing officers, VPs of e-commerce, those sort of people. And we asked them some questions about how their digital experience was working and where they thought there were real challenges in connecting with the consumer. And the reason that we went and asked them is that it was very obvious that things had changed since the pandemic. Online traffic is flat or declining. There's a very active second-hand market. Often you're competing with people that have already bought from you, but they're reselling those clothes online in Vinted and other places. There are new entrants like Shein and Temu that have completely different operating models. Obviously, it's a difficult external environment. Tariffs, taxes, cost of living crisis, all of these things are dampening consumers' ability to spend. Gen AI answers are reducing organic traffic to the site as well. And product discovery for many, particularly Gen Z type consumers, has migrated into social media channels. So this is a really perfect storm of challenging environment for fashion retail. And I've been in this industry for a long time and worked in many of these sorts of companies or founded businesses in these segments. And the good news for those software vendors is there's been a lot of spend on new technology. There's been a huge set of investment in analytics, personalization, customer data, content, e-commerce, and order management. But here's the thing, folks. When you look at the actual performance of the industry, it hasn't really moved the needle. So full price sell-through in all of our conversations with these retailers was down. There was a 60% increase in acquisition costs. There was a significant uptick in returns. Customers were buying more occasionally, but they were sending a lot of garments back. And go on, next. There we go. And there was a real decline in customer lifetime value. And I think this is the most telling of all of these metrics, right? The purpose of our businesses is to create cohorts of profitable customers. The bigger that cohort of repeat profitable customers, the more effectively us brands and retailers are going to perform. But that decline in lifetime value, when we spoke to our interview panel, was all down to this huge proliferation of choice. Consumers had the ability to come in, buy something, disappear, and a lot of that was driven by overinvestment in PPC. So to find out why, we researched 100 retailers doing some desk research. We did 45 hours of interviews. And even the best performing retailers complained that the customer experience itself was broken, and there were some very common symptoms. In that broken customer experience, the intent signal was hard to find. Customers complained that they didn't feel understood. Social first traffic bounced 2x and conversion was really poor. The journey had fragmented, too many silos and tools, so marketing team focused on ROAS, product discovery team focused on conversion and average order value, et cetera, but there was no sort of common language to describe the whole journey. With too many one-and-done shoppers, loyalty is dead. And shoppers still can't find what they're looking for. So it was against this backdrop that we were asking them these questions. Now, on this diagram, it's very clear that shopping for fashion is completely different, right? It's hard to do this. It's not like any other e-commerce segment. Physical shape, size, and style impact what a customer can purchase. Making his product catalog itself changes quite rapidly. It's very seasonal. These things are happening all the time. So historical sales data isn't very relevant. It's very difficult to use data and automation when you have a cold start issue. Timing is key. Seasonality makes a big difference. Compatibility of purchases is crucial. Out of stock and return rate reasons vary, and shoppers talk in looks and trends, occasions. But digital experiences don't really understand that language natively. And ultimately, fashion's about creating a brand experience. And what was obvious is that fashion experiences themselves at every point in the customer journey were broken. So you're invisible on Google and Gen AI because shoppers don't type blue V-neck knit. They're asking, give me something fresh for a spring wedding. The landing experiences are tone deaf. Shoppers arrive speaking in trends and styles and occasions, but the pages are very uninspiring. Search and merchandising, even when they've found you, doesn't work because the keywords that they use, the language that they use to ask for some product recommendations just don't exist. Recommendations themselves aren't very effective because they don't have any concept of style and trend and occasion. And the post-purchase journey, you're using business segmentation like recency, frequency, monetary value, RFM, but they're thinking about summer vibes, power dressing, festival season. So all of those emails don't really land. They go unopened. So what was clear is that generic retail technology just doesn't understand fashion, and this is costing the retailers that we spoke to something like 4 to 7% revenue per visitor. So it's a significant amount of money being left on the table because this experience isn't working in the way that consumers expect. So what we concluded was that generic approaches to marketing, customer segmentation, and personalization don't engage fashion shoppers in the way that you'd like. So how do you fix that? Well, let's talk about product data in the language of fashion, because I think here is the answer to our question, not just for humans, but also for machines, because you now have to bring the essence of your brand into the product feed itself and do something different and talk in a language that the consumer really understands. So this is Kirsty. She's a confident professional. She wants the perfect summer party dress. She knows what she wants, but finding all those qualities, flattering, comfortable, stylish, etc., isn't easy. So this is her sort of word cloud, things that she cares about on the right-hand side. Flatters my figure, not too revealing, breathable fabric, etc., etc. The problem, however, is that most product data doesn't include any of that language or attribution. It tends to deal in physical attributes. So care instructions, manufacturing dates, patterns, product names, colors, sleeve lengths, price, size, weight. They're all useful attributes, folks, but they don't really help Kirsty to find the right product because there's no way to do the join. No way to do the join in search, no way to do the join in content, no way to do the join in an LLM. So what do we do? Well, we have a team of stylists at Map Fashion. One of the most exciting things about acquiring Sarah's company is not just getting Sarah to work for us as well, but we have a fashion stylist group that spends all of their time thinking about the language. Ex-Vogue editors, fashion students, fashion professionals that really understand what it takes to dress you well. Sarah started the business with a really simple question, which was, why can a stylist dress me better than I can dress myself? And we've sort of taken that philosophy and approach and embedded it into the product data itself. So really what we're trying to do is bring the stylist sense of fashion aesthetic into the data to power the data to connect with your consumers in a way that they really understand. So now what we can see is that we can map Kirsty's requirements to what is actually in the product itself. And that gives us a much more customer experience flow, customer first flow. So we're starting with the way that customers think about buying fashion, not the way that we have to manufacture fashion. There's more emotional intent. You can filter by personal body priorities, so define your waist, flatter arms, all of these sorts of things. So unlike standard size or shape filters, this is much more relevant. And fundamentally, you can align with the personal style of your shoppers. And you can take that data across the organization into buying, merchandising, distribution, logistics, and use that data to drive much better outcomes across the business. So what do? We close the language gap between merchant speak and customer speak. Our solution is all about bringing these qualitative product attributes together and using them to power real business outcomes. So 650 trends, edit styles, climate categories. We've got this very rich taxonomy, which we can apply very quickly to your data. The team itself does all the enrichment. And then we can inject that language of customers into your retail technology stack. So we go from typical attribution to these enhanced physical attributes. These enhanced physical attributes, sleeve styles, colors, fiber types, patterns, but most importantly into these buying intent attributes that really join your assortment, your catalog with the customer. So trends, climate, modesty, shape solution, occasions, etc., etc. The taxonomy is extremely rich. I could spend the next 15 minutes flicking you through all the different ways in which we describe these things, but I won't do that. But this is just for female department categories, and it goes as far as B. But what we end up with is this very rich set of product data that really brings the customer into the experience, which means that we can translate that as an experience everywhere where that data lives. And we've got some partners here today that will help you to do that. So 26,000 attributes, millions of stylist-labeled products, billions of training data points. So we're using this to drive a whole range of LLM-based and machine vision-based automations for many of our customers. Very, very accurate product data, which really matters. And what can you do with it? Well, we have really sort of two offers. We can take that deep product attribution, the fashion taxonomy, and we can drive that into enhanced search engine marketing, so improving your PPC, driving better SEO on site. We can drive it into ChatGPT and all these emerging places where your consumers spend their time, and we can also use it to drive better search and merchandising on site. So rather than having filters and facets based on physical attributes, we can have them based on the trend and occasion attributes that shoppers really care about. But we also use that product data to do something very special indeed, which is create personalization in terms of recommendations and outfits that are very accurate and very sophisticated ways to automate the production of the kind of content your customers really want to be inspired. So personalized similar items, personalized outfits, personalized emails that really resonate, that talk the language of the consumer. So how do you get there? You don't have to do it all at once. We can really sort of work with you to transform your discovery ecosystem, inject your feeds with all these additional product attributes, working with your partners to do so. We can make the language of the customer consistent on your site so that it feels like an experience that's made for her. We can deliver personalization that really reflects how consumers buy fashion. And ultimately, we can drive all of that data into the post-purchase experience and create an experience that really retains the context for that customer every touch point. And that will close that customer expectation gap and repair that experience. So 4 to 7% revenue per visitor uplifts without a huge heavy technical lift, which I think is really important because nobody wants to do another replatforming, right? But here's a way to get a significant upgrade to your experience without having to do a huge amount of technical integration. And with that, I'll leave it there. Thank you.